we'll go ahead and, oh, wait a minute. I'm going to turn that one off. All right, let's see what we got here. I guess we can go ahead and get started. Dave, if you want to maybe lead off with some casual conversation with Dave Vesser of DC Books, DC Vesser Books, DC Books. What is it? DC Books. I got to get my story straight.
Books by DC Vesser.
Books by, oh my God, Dave. It's not like I haven't been doing this for a while, right?
we're both a little bit rusty, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think that we're both a little rusty. But Dave and I were on the phone here earlier, and we were starting to have a good conversation. And I said, you know what? Let's pause. Let's get this on video. And here we are today again with Dave Vesser from Books by DC Vesser. So, Dave, what's going on today? Can you give us a little? Well, you know what? Let's start off with your book, your latest book, or your newest book coming out. Go ahead.
Well, I'm in final edit on a book I'm calling More Than Don't Let Them Win. What happened was a good friend of mine asked for a copy of my first book, which was called Don't Let Them Win, and I gave it to her. And about a year later, she's asking me questions about various different topics. First one and then another, something else. And finally, I said, "Well, you know what? You really haven't read my book, have you?" And she said, "Well, it was so overwhelming that I just got frustrated trying to go through it. You had a whole lot of information in there. I think you should have done a little better job of explaining what you were trying to do." So I went back through and I put all that information in, and I put some additional information in the book. So I'm calling it More Than Don't Let Them Win. And that's in final edit right now. So it should be hopefully published soon. I'm saying perhaps by Christmas time. I'm guessing at that. But that's about all I have on More Than Don't Let Them Win. What we're also doing is getting ready to do a rewrite, I think, of just about everything you should know about a handgun, because the very first question I was asked about my book, just about everything you should know about handgun, that topic wasn't covered at all in my book. So I thought, well, if I put that in there, which I could do, it'll be just one more thing closer to just about everything you should know about handgun.
Yeah, absolutely. So your book's coming out just in time for Christmas.
Well, I hope it'll be out for Christmas. Now, another one that I'm working on right now is called Political Corruption, the Other PC, and Politically Correct. I'm telling about what political corruption is and how it affects our everyday lives, our vocabulary, the way we do business, the way we interact with one another. And then I discuss a lot of different people that I think are causing political corruption. And for one, I think one of the more corrupt things that we have going on in our United States today is the fact that there's absolutely no term limits for congressional leaders and senators. We have people, believe it or not, we have people who've been in Congress for 40 years. And if you think about it, that's all they've done for all their entire life. They've never been in business or anything like that. They don't know how to make money. They don't know how to make laws. I mean, people that have been in for 40 plus years, they introduced a lot of bills to Congress that somehow wiggle their way through the Senate and get the veto at the White House level or whatever the case may be. But the fact is, having been there for 40 years, there's just not a lot of bills being passed. So I think that's corrupt on our end, and it's one of many problems that needs to be fixed.
So we were talking about that earlier. It's probably a good segue to the next conversation, just a little bit of that casual conversation with you about the current political climate, where we're at, where we are at as far as the United States is concerned, where our political environment's at with the people that are currently serving terms in Congress and Senate, and some even in the White House. Can you go ahead and, I mean, who do we want to point out a couple things, or how do you want to
Well, my
proceed?
thoughts on that is some of my thoughts. I put a blog out today about this particular issue. It's Kamala Harris and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They came out. I'm sure a lot of you remember. They came out a couple of months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, with this new idea to get clean energy. Okay, and the idea is they're calling it Green New Deal, and a lot of things have to be considered whenever we make a big change in any organization. One thing is you have to, first of all, you have to have a target. You have to have uh, tangible and accomplishable tasks associated with any movement you're making, because there's certain costs associated with those tasks. One thing we don't know as far as how to get clean energy is we don't know exactly everything we need to do. We do know we need all brand new infrastructure. We have to start from ground zero on in a lot of industrial areas, as far as switching from coal to electric power, switching from fossil fuels to electric power, switching from uh, old style muscle type cars to the new smoother running, cleaner burning electric cars. We have to have all brand new infrastructure, but no one can say exactly what that infrastructure is or how much it'll cost. Um, there's a company called Competitive Enterprise Institute, that's CEI. They conducted a study on 5 states, on Alaska, uh, Florida, New Hampshire, New Mexico, and Pennsylvania, and they decided with just a very skimming the top surface of what it's going to cost, it's going to cost not millions, not billions, not trillions, but they're talking quintillions and quadrillions of their numbers with a 1 and 15 zeros behind it, or a number 1 with 18 zeros behind it. I mean, that's our national deficit is only 22.5 trillion. That's one with what 12 zeros behind it. So we're astronomically going toward an uncalculable figure that we just can't get our hands around. The first year alone, with the infrastructure changes in those 5 states that the CEI conducted the study in, they found that the average family would be impacted by $70,000 annually for that first year. That's $70,000 you won't make. Now, I'm not sure how many people in Pennsylvania can afford to give up $70,000, but if I was living in Pennsylvania, I would be very, very upset with any government that would suggest that I would have to join any program that's going to cost me $70,000 a year. And then the second year, the second, third, fourth, and fifth year, they're estimating an additional $35,000 per family per year that you're going to lose. Okay, and for the sixth and consecutive annual incomes, they'll only be affected by 35,000, 37,000, I think was the number, but they're only the amount that they're paying is leveling out at $37,000 for maintenance of this Green New Deal infrastructure. Now that's just in those 5 states. Imagine the amount of money that it would cost to have that kind of money coming in per capita to the government for the 6th and 7th and 8th year. It's all maintenance fees.
And I would think that an initiative that big wouldn't really have an impact unless you had several different countries around the world that participated. Because I just have a real hard time believing that any changes that are made to climate, whether, and that being, part of some kind of Green New Deal, that initiative couldn't just be subsumed completely by the United States. There's no way. And even if we were to start making those changes now, what effect would we really have on the world if that's really the objective?
Well, now, although the United States would be anticipated to carry the lion's share of this effort, Kamala Harris and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez both agreed that we would carry the lion's share, but you're right, 100%. It would be a universal effort. And that's scary in and of itself because if you read my book, the first book, Don't Let Them Win, you would see that one of the goals of the world elites is to have a one world government, a one world church, a one world bank, no borders anywhere, just wander about as nomadic as you want to be. And there's no system in the world that can support that either. Where would we all live? Okay, now today, most might agree that the United States is perhaps one of the best places in the world to live. Well, that depends on if you want a four-season year. Where in the United States would you live? Would you all live in New York, like we're trying to do now? New York City, right now, as everyone knows, is the most populated city in the world, uh, per, per capita per square foot. It's also a fact that you can take the entirety of the 7.5 billion people in the world, and you can put them on all inside of the boundaries, the borders of the state of Texas. Okay, everybody would be in Texas, and everybody would be about as close to one another as they are in New York City right now. But you, where would you govern? And still, again, in my book, Don't Let Them Win, I describe these mega regions that we're going to have around the world, and capitals of the world, and places like that. Uh, I just don't know how you would divvy up a bill that big. Now, with the One World Bank, I guess you could somehow fix some kind of tax to the money that they're giving you to live on. Of course, they give the socialist government that our Democratic Party is turning into. Uh, I just can't get my head around it, Hector. I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
Yeah, and, it's funny because it like the latest news coming out, or like I don't know if it's really news, but the latest thing on social media that I see is this whole that initiative that started with the plastic straws, right? It's like they converted to paper straws, but what about all the all plastic cups that go with the with those straws? I don't get it. I don't get it. I really don't. Some of that stuff just seems silly. But besides that, like I don't understand how I can't get my head wrapped around like people who support people like AOC, for instance. Like, how can you sit there and listen to her and go, man, I voted that chick in? I don't get it. I don't know. So we'll see what happens. I know that she's got some competition coming up behind her for next year, along
Well,
with
she not only
several
has
others.
some competition coming up, she also has a lot of intelligent supporters, I think. I was talking with a fellow at work today, a colleague of mine, and as level-headed as I thought he was, he turned out to be an AOC supporter. He thinks that she has a wonderful idea, and he articulately put it out there that we need to do something about our planet now today because I understand the part about the attrition, the population is going to go down a little bit, but what we need to do, we need to find a way, and these were his words. He says, we need to find a way to sustain the world as one country forever and ever and ever. He says, now, yeah, we're going to have attrition during these next few hundred years, but we're going to have to sustain the world for the next, according to him, the world's 4 to 5 billion years old. He says we're good for another 4 to 5 billion years. And that's how long he's looking at sustaining the world. But if you listen to exactly what he was saying, he was using those messages that the Illuminati has been using for a long time about sustainability, global this, global something else, the global elites. And it's spooky when you listen to it. There's all kinds of supporters out there. They've rationalized in their mind that they're on the mission here and they're going to fulfill that mission.
Just with that though, also is the culture in itself. I would only imagine that if you're trying to live in one world and there was no borders and everybody could just come and go, the cultural impact on those areas, and just one aspect of all of this, right? That's just one aspect. Like that would these the countries and people have developed over hundreds and thousands, thousands of years. and then all of a sudden you want to change that culture. I mean, you know, what happens to all that becomes, who knows?
I don't know where it's going either. I'd like to have the screenplay on that. Um, I think that we need, yeah, we have to do some fixing, but we need to know what we're going to fix before we can tackle that particular problem. We have to decide what's broke. If it's the government that's broke, we need to fix the government. But we're not fixing our government for our capitalist ways by turning toward socialism. And that's what this Green New Deal is all about. Interjecting into our capitalist society ways of introducing socialism.
So many things that come out, especially with social media being so prevalent nowadays. Who knows? You know, who knows really what's what, and the influence that these people have on the world today, just through social media. I mean, the nice thing about it is that you you have a much larger audience, and so a lot of people are more aware. So that's good, yes. But then the negative influence on it, and you know the campaigns that they run, and you know what surprises me though is that, like for instance, Crenshaw, I believe it's Crenshaw, correct? The Navy SEAL, the former Navy SEAL, that's a congressman.
Right, yes.
And then Cadence. I mean, I don't know why Cadence doesn't get more publicity than she does on her own. Like, yeah, and she's a Democrat, but if you look at what she's trying to do, to me, she gets it. But then you've got some bozo like AOC out there, and she's getting every type of, you know, social media coverage, news media coverage, and it just blows my mind that, you know, people like Owens or Cadence is not out there doing what she's doing. Why she's not getting publicity? But I don't know. I don't know what.
Well, you know, one thing that Alexandria Cortez has going on her behalf is she has a good relationship with George Soros, and George Soros owns most of the media in the world. He certainly owns the biggest uh, part of ABC, NBC, MSNBC, the Washington Post. He owns a company called Liberty Media. It was Liberty Media, George Soros got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez elected, although only, what, 13, 18% of the voters turned out. She still won the majority and won the position for representative of their 14th district there in New York. And although she gets a lot of things wrong, it's easy to cover that up when you're in control of the media. You can eradicate that misinformation quickly. But the goal here, I think, is indeed to put out misinformation, because how long did it take for President Trump's comments about go back to where it is you come from? How quickly did that turn into him saying something completely different? Get out of the country or something like that. If you don't like it, leave. Uh, that never happened. So you're quite right about the social media being a part of news media, but it takes a stronger mind to first fact check that information before you pass it along. And I think that's what a lot of us are missing doing. We're not doing our fact checking. I see things all the time that uh, I was in a meeting this morning, and I'm going to change gears here just a little bit, but I'm going to give you an example. Talk about misinformation. I'm going to say what happened this morning wasn't exactly misinformation. It was misuse of a word. The guy that was talking was talking about we need to gather data over here so we can analyze this, so we can prevent something else from occurring. Because the first thing you know, we're going to have the full money on this. Well, if you know what a full money is, certainly that was an inappropriate word to use to prevent. Talk about preventing a catastrophe. Yeah, I don't want to show up to work with a full money on, but I also at the same time I think we need to understand what it is we're saying. We can't just go out there and man be pansy, throw around adjectives and pronouns and adverbs and expect everyone to figure out what it is, what our message is we're trying to get across. We need to know what we're talking about. It's very important to know what you're talking about, and a great deal of that depends upon fact checking. You have to fact check everything these days. Social media is so easily available. The first thing you want to do is post that Instagram or tweet that Twitter or post your Facebook, whatever it is you're on. It's you want to get that stuff out quickly before somebody else. Because when you get something that is right, wow, you're the hero. But when you get something that's just wrong, you shouldn't be anywhere near close to the hero because you're putting out misinformation.
So instead of giving it all away today, Dave, we're going to go ahead and cut the show short, and we would love for you guys to join us again next week as we go live and we working out the bugs. I think this is probably a second or third time that we've been on, Dave.
Second or third, yeah.
Yep. So
it is the third, yeah.
Yeah. So let's I would invite watchers and listeners and viewers to like and subscribe to Books by DC Vesser, both on YouTube. He is on Facebook as well, where he posts his blogs. He's also got a blog out there, Blogs by DC Vesser. And
you could do a far better job at this than I can, but I wish you would explain to people who are listening what actually happens when they subscribe either to this or subscribe to dcvesser.blogspot.
Sure. Well, for one, it keeps you informed. And I think that's probably the best way. It keeps you informed on our updates, on Dave's updates. But it does keep people informed, it keeps them, it keeps you knowledgeable. So you understand what's coming and what you're seeing, what you're viewing, what you're reading. And I think Dave does a great job on putting out information that is correct.
Thank you.
But yeah, absolutely. But again, it's good information to have, and we've touched on some pretty good topics over the past several years, especially with going from we started with just the Facebook, or actually building the website, which is www.dcvesser.com, and then we went on to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and slowly been building your social media platform for people to enjoy. So if you could, go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to his channel. And hopefully we'll see you guys soon again. Go ahead, Dave. If you got any closing comments, go right ahead.
I'm good to go, and I want to say thanks, brother. I appreciate the time we spent together today.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys soon.